Hey there, cats and kitties. I'm the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we're discussing my thoughts on episode 9 of the anime series, Orange. And this is definitely an interesting episode. We finally have upon us the track meet and a whole host of other gymnastic competitions going on within the school, where we've seen the entirety of it broken up into two teams, respectively, red versus blue, and the entirety of our main cast all having vied to become a part of the track meet itself in their, sort of mutual agreement to be supportive of and make life worth living for Kakeru, and trying to align romantically the paths of Kakeru and Naho, respectively. And it's really intriguing because we get further insights into some of the other letters some of the other characters have gotten, most specifically Azusa, whose birthday unfolds in this episode. It's during the month of October, and it's kind of sweet. It really harkened back to me, one of my favorite all-time films, the musical Singin' in the Rain, where it was a rainy day, and it hadn't been expected to be because the forecast had basically predicted a very dry and sunny day, a hot day, and all that kind of stuff. And in the original history, between the 6 of the characters, they only had 2 umbrellas, so all 3 of the guys ended up sharing one, and all 3 of the girls ended up sharing one, further propelling the distancing that Kakeru was feeling, and very much missing his mother and mulling over all of these depressive sort of thoughts and feelings. And so each of these characters are whispering in very hushed tones that they're all going to be sure to have umbrellas of their own. And it's quite hilarious because Hagita ends up gifting Azusa a brand new umbrella on this particular day. And even though she has this brand new umbrella, when it comes time that it is actually raining, she has one on her shoulder. She has the unused birthday-given, gift of an umbrella. And Kakeru is desperately, requesting that someone give him one or lend him, let him share one with him. And none of them are having anything to do with it. Even Azusa, who has her gifted one in hand and another one slung over her shoulder, all because they're trying to align Naho and Kakeru. And so Naho, she's very much kind of reluctantly just trying to pass hers off to him rather than think about sharing it. And it's actually his suggestion that they actually share it. And I realized that this is the first episode out of the entirety of this series where I was almost becoming perturbed with their reluctance, their very much repressive sort of natures, even though I've been very much vocal about how, in the case of these two characters, you have to look at the societal ramifications of how they grew up, how they were brought up. In Japanese culture, overt shows of affection are taboo, are seen as uncouth, and also the sort of nerve-wracking nature, the anxiety that is goes hand in hand with being a teenager and all that kind of stuff. Even into adulthood, you can be very much racked by severe anxiety. I'm somebody who suffers from it myself, and so sometimes just, interactions, even very basic with other human beings, can be something that is devastating to you and you want nothing to do with. And so all of these things are, attributes that are having these characters really be reluctant and hesitant around each other, as well as it goes much deeper with Kakeru as well. I mean, there are some foreshadowing comments between he and Suwa about his potentially not being around for too much longer. He makes the excuse, that his family might move away or something along those lines, or he might just disappear one day. So obviously he's still very much thinking internally about, ending his life, not being around. And I gotta admit, I was actually kind of confused when Kakeru was telling all of the rest of the characters that his mother was working that day and couldn't attend in answer to, when they ask him where his family is, because all of their parents and things of that sort have shown up to be supportive of their kids. And someone actually does, I think it's Suwa's father, bring his grandmother to try to make his day better and everything. But it really caught me off guard, and I was like, okay, wait a minute. I thought all of the characters already knew that his mother committed suicide. And then I remembered that actually the only person he really confessed that to was Naho and maybe Suwa, because you had that very emotional moment in a previous episode where they were hugging him and saying, it's not your fault what happened. And so he, they finally revealed that he was trying to hide it from everybody, make them think his mother just, was working that day. And it just kind of threw me off at first. But it's one of those things where I wasn't so much disappointed with Naho in, as far as her lack of forward momentum. There was some forward momentum between them. They shared some moments where they finally held hands, basically walking home together, sharing that umbrella finally, and, basically talking about, should we date? Well, I'd be happy just, being together with you. We don't actually have to formally date and all this kind of stuff. And it was a little bit ridiculous to me at this point because all of the other characters have now gotten involved. And up until this point, I have felt that with the help of the letter that Naho has received tentatively from herself, from the future, from 10 years hence, she's been making a lot of these decisions herself, and she's been coming to the conclusions herself. Of course, she has been supported by Suwa and things of that nature, but really she's been reliant on her self-sufficiency and, making those decisions by herself and making all of that progress and bridging that gap between she and Kakeru on her own. And this was the first time out where, because of the involvement of the other characters, because of the insights of their all having letters, I almost feel like she rested too much of that burden on the rest of them, so that a lot of her decision-making was really having to be propelled by the other characters. When you have them actually taking part in the track meet, and you have Suwa pulling off his shirt and being all ripped and cut and everything and gorgeous for all the other girls, even the girls on the opposite team, the blue team, who say their hearts are with the red team because of how fine he is and all that kind of stuff. Even Naho can't contain herself saying that he's attractive. And then you see Hagita, when he pulls his shirt off, he used permanent marker, which he didn't realize was permanent, to draw on his six-pack, which, made me die laughing. But when it comes to Kakeru, she basically realizes how attractive she finds him, and it takes Azusa to, try to propel her to tell him that she finds him attractive, say something to give him a confidence boost and all this kind of stuff. And you have these interactions between he and Suwa, where Suwa's saying, like, well, you're not dating her. Don't you worry about that? Aren't you concerned about that? Of course, this is where he says, well, I might not be around forever. And Suwa calls him on and is like, well, what if I wanted to date her? And I go up and ask her, you guys aren't formal. There's nothing formal between you. How would you feel about that? And of course, basically you have Kakeru being like, well, I guess I would be fine with that. That would actually be pretty good. And of course, that's not how he feels at all. But he's in such a denial, a place of, remorse and regret and guilt. He's not thinking clearly enough, and he's not willing to sort of reveal to himself how much he feels for Naho, and that it really does bother him, that it would really make him happier, a happier individual, a happier human being, to know that, there is some formality between them, that there is something deeper in their connection. And it was just, one of those things where, as I say, even though I have been vocally supportive of both of them, it really upsets me that he is still so guilt-ridden and guilt-stricken, and still in a sort of parallel with this alignment of self-destruction, as well as with Naho, that, she's falling back a little too much on the rest of the characters, in their support. I mean, it's one thing to be supportive, and it's another thing to carry the burden for someone. And I feel like she was very much letting them carry the burden for her, not really using her common sense and thought processes as she has been doing in every episode previous to this. And so by the end, you basically have this kind of estranged quality where Kakeru is taking into account the values of how much he does feel about her. And Suwa, he feels like it's pitch perfect because he's trying to make Kakeru feel jealous. He's trying to propel Kakeru into confronting how he feels so that he will actually act on it. And it's still not going to be easy for either of these two characters. But I wish I had the sense that Naho wasn't, again, sort of crushing under the weight of everything, the anxiety and her feelings, and being so recoiling every time they accidentally bump into each other or every time they want to hold hands. When finally they were alone together, she held out her hand, and we finally saw another aspect of her trying to come to that conclusion on her own. But when the characters have to tell her to compliment him, and she's bandaging up Suwa, and, you know, of course, you have Kaguru being reluctant and smacking her hand away because of the sort of, you know, basically being sort of jealous about Suwa's proposal of asking her out, and seeing them being very close in how she's bandaging him up and everything like that. It got a little frustrating. It felt like backpedaling a little bit. And I can only hope that from here on out, we still see a further forward momentum going between all of these characters. I would love to see further insights in the letters that the other characters have gotten. For the most part, every one of the letters has been summed up as being very much, you know, the gist is to be as supportive as they can between Kaguru and Naho, and trying to align them and get them together. And, you know, it was interesting seeing that at one point when that was revealed, Suwa, the look on his face was like, you know, like, it does make me wonder if he knows about the fact that they're married with a child in the future, and he's having internal second thoughts or not. Of course, by the end of the episode, because he is so, you know, trying to rail against Kaguru and get him jealous and try to propel him to confront his own feelings and all that kind of stuff, it could go either way, as far as if it becomes a love triangle or not, if it could possibly be that. But I wasn't disappointed overall with this episode. I just was mildly perturbed because I felt like Naho had made so much forward progression in baby step form, no doubt, but she has done a lot of it on her own. And I just felt like in her, you know, sort of becoming aware that the rest of her friends were becoming supportive and going to do whatever they could to help her, she was feeling less of needing to do the work herself, and you know, sort of becoming that much more repressive in the way she was behaving. And so I hope we you know, don't see any more of that. I hope we continue to see the characters growing and progressing further ahead and aligning in however they need to, you know. It's still very much up for debate how exactly this is all going to play out, whether or not Kakuru's life can actually be saved, whether or not it is, you know, will this still see both he and Naho being together? Will she still end up with Suwa? You know, did he receive a letter? I had a great discussion on the last video with one of you guys talking about, could it be possible that, you know, Kaguru could have gotten a letter from, if not himself, because he wouldn't be around, you know, from somebody else, Naho or something along those lines. It's a very intriguing series, and the turn of events, whether or not these are parallel worlds or timelines being completely refurbished and, you know, redirected, it's all fascinating to me. And I just love being supportive of these characters, and I want to see them actually propelling themselves towards some kind of positive outcome. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've seen episode 9 of Orange, if you enjoyed it, if you felt in agreement with me that there was, you know, a little bit overplaying on Naho's repressive nature in her falling back on the guidance of her friends rather than fully coming to the fore on her own as she has in the past, or if you think it's just a sort of bump in the road that the characters easily had gotten over by the end of this episode, what you thought of Kakuru's, you know, basically being propelled into jealousy by Suwa, and do you think this is becoming a thorough love triangle as I had purported it would be in a previous episode discussion video? You know, it's all really intriguing, as I say. And so yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. Love it or hate it. Anything goes in the comments below. Otherwise, it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.